Rolly Romero cracked a microphone open this week and said something that shouldn't have made sense, but somehow made too much sense. And now the entire boxing world is holding its breath waiting for what Claressa Shields does next. Rolly looked directly into the camera and said, calmly, almost tired, that Claressa Shields has a crush on him. Not a rivalry. Not a call-out. A crush. Rolly said the woman who calls herself the greatest of all time is in love with him. And he doesn't know why. And he doesn't want to know why. And he wants her gone from his timeline, his weight class, his weekend, and his life. Rolly said Claressa Shields keeps knocking on his door like a girl on the playground trying to punch the boy she likes. And Rolly is standing on the porch with the door chain shut. Y'all tuned in with your guy, Streetlight Sessions, live on The Wire. Buckle up, because tonight we are walking straight into the romance ring, where the love story punches back, and where Claressa Shields is playing a part nobody in boxing asked her to audition for. Let me set the scene for anyone who just walked into the room. Rolly Romero, WBA welterweight champion, is preparing for the biggest weekend of his career, sharing a card with Teofimo Lopez. And instead of getting to focus on his opponent, he is spending his media week answering questions about a woman who has been chasing his shadow across every microphone in the sport. And Rolly, being Rolly, decided he was done being polite. Rolly said the quiet part out loud. Rolly said Claressa Shields is not a peer, she is not a rival, she is not a fight. She is a fan who forgot what side of the ropes she paid to sit on. That is a heavy accusation coming from a man who normally spends his interviews trash-talking every opponent inside 3 weight classes. When Rolly Romero, the loudest microphone in boxing, is the one calmly asking a woman to stop, that is not a beef. That is a restraining order in slow motion. Now, if you have been tracking Claressa Shields for the last stretch, you already know she has been living in the call-out economy for years. Claressa Shields will call out anyone with a pulse and a payday. Claressa Shields called out Keith Thurman. Claressa Shields called out Terrence Crawford in her dreams. Claressa Shields called out every welterweight who breathes the same air. And now Claressa Shields has zoomed in on Rolly Romero specifically, with a laser focus that even Rolly's own team is starting to describe as concerning. Claressa Shields didn't just say she could beat Rolly. Claressa Shields said she could outbox him. Claressa Shields said she has been sparring men for 2 decades and Rolly is just the next name on the ledger. Claressa Shields said she is not scared. Claressa Shields said her legacy demands it. Claressa Shields said. And every time Claressa Shields said it, Rolly said nothing back. Until this week, when Rolly finally said the one word that broke the internet in 2 syllables. Delusional. That was the second the wheels came off the wagon. Rolly said delusional, and the boxing world exhaled at the same time, because everyone had been thinking it, and nobody wanted to be the one to say it about a woman who has 3 Olympic medals and a wall full of belts. Rolly said it, so Rolly wears it. And Claressa Shields, being Claressa Shields, could not let Rolly wear it alone. Claressa Shields did what Claressa Shields always does. Claressa Shields ran to the mirror, put on the costume, and turned herself into her own opposition. Wild scene. Let me explain what I mean, because I need y'all to understand the full architecture of what Claressa Shields is doing right now. Claressa Shields sat down in an interview, and Claressa Shields told the world that she has been slipping into an alter ego. Claressa Shields didn't say a nickname. Claressa Shields didn't say a stage name. Claressa Shields said an alter ego. And the alter ego Claressa Shields chose is a masculine mirror copy of Rolly Romero's own government name. Rolly's real first name is Orlando. Claressa Shields took Orlando, spun it through a blender, mashed it into her own name, and came out with something that sounds like a rejected soap opera character. That is not admiration. That is not a joke. That is not a nickname. That is a person absorbing another person. That is reading like a Netflix docuseries with an unhappy ending. Now, hold that thought, because this is not the first time Claressa Shields has done this. Roll it back. Remember when Claressa Shields wanted to be Remy Ma so bad, she took her energy, her cadence, her platform, and tried to graft it onto her own persona? Remember when Claressa Shields circled around Alicia Baumgardner like a moth on a porch light, mimicking, mirroring, matching? Claressa Shields has a pattern. Claressa Shields does not just want to defeat people. Claressa Shields wants to become people. And when Claressa Shields cannot become them, Claressa Shields settles for wearing their name like a costume. That's reading like a symptom, not a strategy. Meanwhile, Rolly Romero is trying to run his fight camp. Rolly Romero is trying to get his weight right, his hands right, his head right. Rolly Romero has a real opponent in Teofimo Lopez and a real Czech waiting on the other side of the ropes. And Rolly Romero has to spend his week answering questions about a woman who has invented a masculine alter ego based on his birth certificate. If that happened at a workplace, human resources would have already sent the memo. If that happened at a school, the principal would already be calling parents. If that happened in a rom-com, the third act would be Rolly moving to a cabin in Montana. But this is boxing, so the only person who can save Rolly Romero from this situation is Claressa Shields herself, and Claressa Shields has shown zero interest in saving Rolly Romero from anything. Let me hit you with the part that made the internet lose its mind. Claressa Shields, instead of taking Rolly's rejection and moving on with grace, Claressa Shields decided the correct response was to remind everyone why her husband, the rapper Papoose, stays with her. Claressa Shields listed her qualifications. Claressa Shields talked about her body. Claressa Shields talked about her face. Claressa Shields talked about the intangible things she can do behind closed doors. Claressa Shields put together a full personal resume, in public, on a podcast, unprompted, all as part of a rebuttal about a man who has publicly told her he is not interested. And I have to say this plain. Rolly Romero could not have cared less. Rolly Romero has heard the resume. Rolly Romero has seen the resume. Rolly Romero has declined the resume. Wild scene. That is the second sin. That is not the last sin. Because Claressa Shields did the one thing you never do when a man says leave me alone. Claressa Shields went to his post. Claressa Shields typed under his post. Claressa Shields left a comment under the post where he was accusing her of exactly this behavior. And her comment was not a denial. Her comment was not an apology. Her comment was a term sheet. Claressa Shields wrote, and I want y'all to hear this cleanly. Claressa Shields wrote that she loves her husband Papoose, but Rolly Romero should let the best man win this weekend. And if Claressa Shields could knock Rolly out in 6 rounds, Claressa Shields would leave Rolly alone. That is a hostage note with a bow on it. That is a stalker offering conditions for their own stopping. That is Claressa Shields saying, pay attention to the syntax. Claressa Shields saying, I will stop harassing you if you let me hit you first. Y'all. That is the third sin, and we are not close to done. Roll it back one more time, because Claressa Shields also gave the world a masterclass in unforced errors. Claressa Shields sat down on a podium and told journalists that she has outboxed plenty of professional men inside the ring over 20 years. Claressa Shields said that with a straight face. Claressa Shields said that with her chin up. Claressa Shields said that with the full weight of her Olympic pedigree behind it. And the internet, being the internet, did what the internet does. The internet dug up the receipts. There is a video, y'all. There is a video of Claressa Shields getting dropped in a sparring session by a man who was not a professional, not a champion, not a contender, just a man with a jab and bad intentions. Claressa Shields hit the mat. Claressa Shields saw her own soul walk out of her body and file a complaint. Claressa Shields laid on that canvas and called for Papoose the way a kid calls for their mother at the airport. And that footage right there, is the footage every boxing hater has bookmarked, and every Claressa Shields defender has muted, and every algorithm has been quietly pushing back to the top of the feed since Rolly Romero opened his mouth this week. That's reading like the receipt was in the desk drawer the whole time. Now let me pull the camera back, because this is where the whole conversation about women's boxing gets ugly, and this is the part Rolly Romero was trying to say before everybody clipped him out of context. Rolly Romero said Claressa Shields is confusing the sport. Rolly Romero said Claressa Shields is polluting the water. Rolly Romero said instead of building the women's welterweight division, instead of going down and cleaning out 154, 147, 140, Claressa Shields is skipping the entire process to chase men who are not in her division, not in her gender, not in her orbit. And Rolly Romero is not the only one saying this. Chris Mannix said it. Sergio Mora said it. Shannon Sharp, who is not a boxing expert, but is somehow always in the middle of every boxing conversation, said it too. Shannon Sharp told Claressa Shields directly on his own show that Rolly Romero would stop her, and Claressa Shields fired back that Shannon Sharpe does not know boxing. That is now Claressa Shields versus Shannon Sharpe, Claressa Shields versus Rolly Romero, Claressa Shields versus Chris Mannix, Claressa Shields versus reality. That is a woman fighting a hallway full of doors at the same time. The problem is not that Claressa Shields believes in herself. Every fighter has to believe in themselves. The problem is that Claressa Shields has confused belief with delivery. Claressa Shields keeps writing checks her weight class cannot cash. Claressa Shields keeps calling out men because the honest headline, that the women's welterweight roster is thin, and Claressa Shields is not the pound-for-pound queen she markets herself as against opposition her own size, is a headline she does not want to sell. So Claressa Shields sells the sideshow instead. Claressa Shields sells Rolly. Claressa Shields sells Terrence Crawford in her dreams. Claressa Shields sells Keith Thurman on a Tuesday. Claressa Shields sells whatever man is trending on a Sunday. And the sport of boxing keeps letting her, because outrage sells, and Claressa Shields is a factory. That's reading like a marketing plan, not a legacy plan. Wild scene. Now, here is where the story gets darker. And here is why I said at the top of this segment that Rolly Romero might not actually be scared of the fight. Rolly Romero might be scared of what happens outside of the fight. Because let me remind y'all, and I say this with all the love in the world for a woman who has accomplished more in boxing than most men will ever dream of. When someone tells you clearly, publicly, and on camera, please stop, and your response is to invent a masculine version of them, wear their name like a Halloween mask, and post conditional love terms under their status update, that is not a rivalry. That is not a call-out. That is a script we have seen before, and we did not like how it ended the first time. Papoose has been in that comment section reading every one of these podcasts. Papoose has been on those interviews. Papoose has been sitting quietly. And Papoose has to be wondering the same thing everybody else is wondering. Why Rolly? Why this man? Why this weekend? Why this loud? The stove don't lie when the pot's already smoking. Roll it back to the branded moment of the whole story. Claressa Shields sat on a podcast and told the host that she has been letting herself transform. Her word, transform, into her alter ego. Claressa Shields said the alter ego is a version of Rolly's real name. Claressa Shields said this on tape, in HD, in front of a live camera, wearing full makeup, with a smile. And she meant it. That was not a joke. That was not a bit. That was not a promotional gimmick. Claressa Shields told the world she is transforming into Rolly Romero. And then Claressa Shields walked into the next room, opened her phone, and typed a comment under Rolly Romero's actual page telling Rolly Romero she loves Papoose. Y'all cannot make this up. Y'all cannot write this. Y'all cannot script this. This is not a movie. This is a Tuesday. Watch this next part. Because after Claressa Shields dropped the alter ego confession, after Claressa Shields dropped the resume, after Claressa Shields dropped the comment under the post, Claressa Shields then went and sat down with a room full of reporters, and Claressa Shields doubled down. Claressa Shields said she is not delusional. Claressa Shields said she has been sparring men for 2 decades. Claressa Shields said she has outboxed professional male fighters. Claressa Shields said she is bigger than Rolly. Claressa Shields said she is longer than Rolly. Claressa Shields said she is more skilled than Rolly. Claressa Shields said the only reason a fight has not happened is that Rolly is scared. Rolly, watching from his hotel room, replied on his own timeline with a single word, no. Not, I will fight you. Not, let's do it. Not, make me an offer. Just no. Just no. Just no. That's reading like a man who has already checked the exits. Because here is the truth about Rolly Romero that Claressa Shields is refusing to acknowledge. Rolly Romero has been in the ring with Gervonta Davis. Rolly Romero has been in the ring with Ryan Garcia. Rolly Romero has been in the ring with Isaac Cruz. Rolly Romero has been in the ring with grown men who have knocked grown men out. Rolly Romero has been in the ring with the same Justin Baldwin that dropped Claressa Shields in that sparring clip we do not talk about. That is not opinion. That is receipt. That is footage. That is the ledger. Rolly Romero has been getting hit by men Claressa Shields has never been in the same building with. And Rolly Romero, the man Claressa Shields wants to trade punches with in a real fight. Rolly Romero is the one telling everyone this fight cannot happen. Not because he is scared of losing, but because he is scared of what happens when the audience finally sees the physics of the thing in real time. The stove don't lie when the pot's already smoking. Wild scene. Let me get to the part that keeps the timeline up at night. Claressa Shields recently signed an $8 million deal. 8 million. 8 zeros with a comma. That is generational money for a boxer, and it is life-changing money for a woman in a sport that pays women pennies on the dollar. And Claressa Shields deserves it. Claressa Shields earned it. Claressa Shields sacrificed for it. And Claressa Shields, with that $8 million payday in the bank, is spending her media week talking about a man in a different weight class, in a different gender, in a different orbit. That is what we call a marketing decision dressed up as a fight demand. Because as long as Claressa Shields is trending, Claressa Shields is earning. And as long as Claressa Shields is earning, Claressa Shields will keep talking. And as long as Claressa Shields keeps talking, Rolly Romero will keep hearing his name every time he opens Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, or the front door of his own gym. That is reading like a business model, not a beef. But here is the wrinkle. The wrinkle is money. Because in this sport, when enough money gets pushed onto a table, the impossible fight suddenly becomes possible. If a promoter walks into a room next week with a bag big enough, Rolly Romero's no starts to sound like a let me think about it. And Claressa Shields knows that. Claressa Shields is banking on that. Claressa Shields is building the demand right now, by any means necessary, so that when the check arrives, Rolly Romero has to look at his family and decide whether the receipt from a spectacle fight is worth the reputational risk of hitting a woman on live television. And when that moment arrives, the only person who benefits is Claressa Shields. Whether Claressa Shields wins, loses, or gets dropped in the second round the same way Claressa Shields got dropped in that sparring session everyone has bookmarked. Every path leads to a payday for Claressa Shields. Every path leads to a headache for Rolly Romero. That is the maze Claressa Shields has built, and Rolly Romero is trying to find the exit before the maze closes. Y'all still with me? Let me keep it moving. Because the wildest sentence Claressa Shields uttered this whole cycle was not the crush comment, was not the resume comment, was not the alter ego comment. The wildest sentence Claressa Shields uttered was, and I quote her paraphrase almost verbatim, "Let me knock you out, and I will leave you alone." Read that sentence again. Read it slower. Read it out loud. That is the sentence of a person who has already decided the ending in their own head and is now writing the middle to justify it. That is a person who has cast the movie, hired the crew, printed the posters, and is now backing the studio into signing off. Claressa Shields is not asking for a fight. Claressa Shields is auditioning for a legacy she has already announced. And Claressa Shields is willing to trade her own peace of mind for the applause of a fight that every honest boxing analyst has already told her is not a fight she wants when the bell rings. Wild scene. Now, let me do the honest thing and give Claressa Shields her flowers, because y'all know your guy on the wire keeps it fair. Claressa Shields is the greatest women's boxer of her generation. Claressa Shields is a two-time Olympic gold medalist. Claressa Shields is a middleweight world champion. Claressa Shields is a light heavyweight world champion. Claressa Shields is a super welterweight world champion. Claressa Shields has cleaned out divisions most men would refuse to jump between in a single career. Claressa Shields has fought Christina Hammer, Savannah Marshall, Marie-Eve Dicaire, and Ivana Habazin. Claressa Shields has done things nobody in her weight class has done. Claressa Shields is real. The problem is not the resume. The problem is what Claressa Shields is doing with the resume right now. Claressa Shields is spending accomplishment credit on a fight that cannot exist. Claressa Shields is trading her own history for a viral moment. And history, real history, does not respect viral moments. History respects the tape. And the tape says Claressa Shields against Rolly Romero is not a competitive matchup. That is a hard sentence. That is a true sentence. And no amount of alter egos, resume lists, comment section notes, or crush theories will change what the tape says. Roll it back one final time, because there is one clip in the entire cycle I have not touched yet, and it might be the loudest clip of all. On that same podcast where Claressa Shields introduced the world to her alter ego, Claressa Shields let something slip that I do not think Claressa Shields realized she said. Claressa Shields said she has been sparring men for 20 years. 20 years. And Claressa Shields said in those 20 years, Claressa Shields has outboxed plenty of professional men. Now, the interviewer, bless him, asked the follow-up nobody else would ask. The interviewer asked, calmly, Was the man in the viral video a professional? Was the man who dropped Claressa Shields on the canvas in a sparring session a professional? And Claressa Shields, the same Claressa Shields who moments earlier had listed her outbox resume, hesitated. Claressa Shields blinked. Claressa Shields tried to change the subject. Claressa Shields did the one thing she never does on tape. Claressa Shields ducked. And that was the second the wheels came off the wagon. Because Claressa Shields cannot have it both ways. Claressa Shields cannot claim she has beaten professional men in sparring and then claim the man who dropped her in sparring was somehow not a real fighter. Claressa Shields cannot say she has been sparring men for 2 decades and then dismiss the one piece of footage of that sparring the internet actually has. That is not how tape works. That is not how boxing works. And that is not how memory works. The video exists. The mat exists. The eye that closed shut on Claressa Shields' face exists. The bruise that Claressa Shields walked out of that gym with exists. And Claressa Shields, on her mission to become the greatest boxer alive, does not get to erase that footage just because it does not fit the pitch deck. Wild scene. Let me tell y'all what I think happens next, because your guy on the wire has been reading this playbook for years, and this playbook has a very predictable third act. Claressa Shields is going to keep talking. Rolly Romero is going to keep saying no. A promoter, probably one who saw the numbers Jake Paul pulled with Mike Tyson, probably one who saw the numbers Katie Taylor pulled with Amanda Serrano, is going to run the math. That promoter is going to walk into Rolly Romero's team's office with a number that starts with an 8-figure guarantee and a pay-per-view split. Rolly Romero's manager is going to look at the number. Rolly Romero's family is going to look at the number. Rolly Romero is going to look at his own bank account. And Rolly Romero, the man who spent all of this year saying no, is going to say maybe. And the moment Rolly Romero says maybe, Claressa Shields wins the news cycle. And the moment Claressa Shields wins the news cycle, Rolly Romero is trapped in a corner of a story he did not write. And that is the part Rolly Romero is trying to prevent right now with every single interview. That is what no actually means when Rolly Romero says it this week. That is a man trying to close a door before someone puts a foot in it. But here is where the story turns, because Claressa Shields is not the only person in this maze with a strategy. Rolly Romero has his own game. Rolly Romero has been running this bit for weeks. Rolly Romero has been leaking just enough disgust to feed the algorithm, but not enough contempt to close the deal. Rolly Romero has been calling Claressa Shields delusional, which is the perfect word, algorithmically, because it invites both her fans and her haters to click. Rolly Romero has been feeding this narrative on purpose. Rolly Romero knows every day Claressa Shields is trending, Rolly Romero is trending. And every day Rolly Romero is trending, Rolly Romero's Teofimo Lopez pay-per-view number climbs. So while I have been sitting here framing Rolly Romero as the reasonable adult in the room, let me be honest with y'all. Rolly Romero is not the victim of this story. Rolly Romero is a co-author. Rolly Romero is happy to sell tickets for a real fight this weekend by tap dancing on top of a fake fight in the future. That is not weakness. That is a business decision. That is reading like a 2-player game where the audience is the third player and the audience, meaning us, is losing on every hand. Wild scene. And that brings us to the biggest question of the whole cycle, the question I want y'all to type in the comments right now, the question every combat sports fan has been afraid to type out loud. If Claressa Shields keeps writing the check, and Rolly Romero keeps circling the check, and the promoter keeps waving the check, who says no first? Who blinks first? Because in boxing, the person who blinks first loses more than the fight. The person who blinks first loses the narrative. And right now, Claressa Shields is refusing to blink. Rolly Romero is refusing to blink. Papoose is refusing to blink. The commissions are refusing to blink. Every party in this standoff has an incentive to keep their eyes wide open. And the longer the standoff lasts, the louder Claressa Shields gets. And the louder Claressa Shields gets, the more it stops sounding like a call-out and starts sounding like something else. Something the sport does not want to name out loud. Something that the words obsession and fixation describe better than the word rivalry ever will. That is why Rolly Romero is not backing off the word delusional. Because Rolly Romero picked that word carefully. Rolly Romero could have said annoying. Rolly Romero could have said clout chaser. Rolly Romero could have said washed. Rolly Romero picked delusional. And once you pick that word, You cannot walk it back. Rolly Romero is not walking it back. Rolly Romero is doubling down on it every day of fight week. That is a message being sent under the message. That's reading like a warning shot before the bell. Because I have to tell y'all, and this is the part one want the comment section to sit with. The reason this story is going viral is not because anybody actually thinks Claressa Shields is going to fight Rolly Romero. Nobody thinks that. Not the sanctioning bodies. Not the commissions. Not Papoose. Not Claressa's own trainers when the cameras cut. The reason this story is going viral is that Claressa Shields has done what almost nobody in modern boxing has managed to do. Claressa Shields has made herself the biggest star in a fight she is not actually in. Rolly Romero is fighting Teofimo Lopez this weekend. Teofimo Lopez, one of the most gifted 140-pound fighters of his generation. And nobody is talking about Teofimo Lopez. Nobody is talking about the actual fight. Nobody is talking about the actual card. Nobody is talking about the actual purse. Everybody is talking about Claressa Shields. Which means Claressa Shields, win, lose, or shadowbox, has already stolen the show. And that, whether you love Claressa Shields or hate Claressa Shields, is a superpower most world champions never learn. That is a very specific brand of genius. That is a very specific brand of chaos. And that is the reason the algorithm keeps rewarding the clips. Because the algorithm does not care who is right. The algorithm cares who is loud. And Claressa Shields, love her or leave her, is the loudest voice in a sport of loud voices. Wild scene. Now, in the middle of all this noise, I need to shout out Papoose, because Papoose is the quietest figure in this entire opera, and Papoose is the one who is actually paying the emotional bill. Papoose has been married to Claressa Shields through the entire call-out arc. Papoose has been in the crowd, in the corner, in the comment section. Papoose has been posting supportive tweets while his wife hands out resumes to Rolly Romero. Papoose has been signing NDAs with his own dignity for what feels like a full calendar year. And Papoose deserves flowers for being the most patient man in hip-hop right now. Because if I am Papoose, I have already made a folder on my phone called Receipts, and that folder is filling up with screenshots faster than Claressa Shields can type them. Papoose is not going to say anything on record. Papoose does not need to. Papoose is a rapper, not a boxing promoter. Papoose's job is to stay in his own lane. But every man in America has looked at Papoose this week and mouthed the words, "You good, king?" And Papoose has smiled, nodded, and kept it moving. Salute to Papoose. That is a level of grace this generation could learn from. That's reading like a man who chose his silence like a strategy. All right, let me tie the whole knot. Claressa Shields is chasing Rolly Romero. Rolly Romero is refusing Claressa Shields. Claressa Shields has invented an alter ego based on Rolly Romero. Claressa Shields has listed her physical resume in defense of a comment nobody made about her body. Claressa Shields has typed conditional love terms under Rolly Romero's own post. Claressa Shields has claimed to have outboxed professional male fighters. Claressa Shields has been documented on tape getting dropped in a sparring session by a man who was not a professional. Claressa Shields is on the biggest payday of her career. Claressa Shields is spending that payday talking about a man in a different weight class, in a different gender, in a different orbit. And Rolly Romero is quietly turning every one of those clips into promo for his own fight card. That is where we are. That is the state of women's boxing on this particular news cycle. That is the state of celebrity boxing beef in 2026. And that is the state of modern combat storytelling, where the fight in the arena matters less than the fight in the algorithm. And that right there is lights out, curtain closed on tonight's segment. But before I let y'all go, I want to plant one final thought in the comments section, because I already know what y'all are going to say, and I want to steer the conversation before it steers itself. Some of y'all are going to say Claressa Shields is a genius. Some of y'all are going to say Claressa Shields is a stalker. Some of y'all are going to say Rolly Romero is being sexist. Some of y'all are going to say Rolly Romero is being smart. Some of y'all are going to say the fight should happen. Some of y'all are going to say the fight should never happen. And every single one of those takes is a valid take. But I want y'all to answer one question in the comments. One question, no cop-outs, no fence riding, no it depends. If a promoter puts 8 figures on the table tomorrow morning, does Rolly Romero take that fight? Does Claressa Shields still show up if the check is real? And if that fight happens and Claressa Shields goes down in the second round, Who is going to be the first person to say we told you so? Because your guy on the wire already has his answer ready. And I am going to be back on this exact stream to remind every single one of y'all which side of history you sat on when the bell finally rings. That's the wire for tonight. Peace up, Streetlight Sessions. If you want the follow-up, because you already know Claressa Shields is going to give us another update by Sunday, hit the bell so the next one lands in your inbox before the news cycle catches up. And if you missed the last segment on Teofimo Lopez's game plan, it is queued up right now on the next tile. Roll it. Wild scene. Peace up. See you on the next one.